Yo, yo, yo. What it do, Chicken Stew family? It's the Copper Color King. We back in this bad boy with some more good content. And today I got a super mega banger for y'all, man. I did some research over the weekend. And what I discovered, man, was, I want to say, groundbreaking evidence that there have been civilizations dwelling in North America that were more advanced and sophisticated than what we were taught in high school or in school in general. You see, they teach us about Egypt. They teach us about Africa. They teach us about Europe. They teach us about the slave trade. They teach us about China. And they teach us about the Middle East. But they always seem to leave out the most important detail. What was going on in the Americas prior to the arrival of any colonizer? So, and you guys can like, comment, and subscribe. Click that notification bell to stay up to date on all content. Upon my research, I discovered an article. And I'm not going to disclose where the article came from yet. We're going to read a little passage from it first just to gain an understanding of what we're here to talk about today. But I discovered an article doing research on Google. And the article made mention of a mound site called Spiro, located in Oklahoma. And within this mound site, they discovered copper ornaments, tools, maps, figurines, serpent figurines. No. Feather serpent figurines. We're going back to the Mayas now, baby. They discovered a lot of this stuff in Oklahoma. Amongst those things, they also discovered a burial ground and several mound temples that were built in such a sophisticated style that you can almost tell that these people were highly advanced. Now, I'm not going to continue to ramble. Let's check out what the article says. So it says, a symbol of racist origin. In the room lined with cedar poles was found a stone effigy, like of which was never before uncovered. It was of a woman and an eagle, or thunderbird, believed to signify that the mound builders were descended from the union of those two. This effigy weighed 14 pounds. There was another effigy of about the same size and weight of a woman kneeling before an altar with the offering in each hand. Strapped to her back was a cradle with a baby in it. In this room also was found the pipe effigy I have mentioned, the peace pipe. In the center room were found 20 copper axes with handles made of persimmon wood and of copper gorgets. Here we go. Right? They putting things together with that copper, man. Copper is the source of energy conduction. In order for energy to pass through or to go from one device to another, you gotta include copper. Right? Again, copper is also found in melanin, which is why grounding is important for us copper colored people. Can I get the ashe? But to continue, they found breastplate nearly a foot in diameter, all engraved with pictures. Altogether, 500 pounds of copper sheets by actual weight and many pounds of copper worked into wire were taken out of this room. And besides, many great objects were of wood or stone covered with sheets of beaten copper. Right? They bringing a lot of these things to life when they working with this copper, man. I want y'all to understand that. Laid in a regular circle around the edges of this room were more than 100 conch shells. The center whorl or core of each of these shells had been taken out, And these cores had then been worked into ornaments, right? Like necklaces and whatnot, pearl necklaces and whatnot. Each was about 8 or 10 inches long, with the knob at one end and a hole drilled in the other. The shells were all engraved with figures of men, women, eagles, head of men and animals, fishes, and queer designs in the shapes of crosses, crescents, and hieroglyphs, almost like those found in the artwork of the extinct race of the Mayans of Yucatan. Right? Almost like those found in the artwork of the extinct race of the Mayans of Yucatan. This is very important. This is very important because where does this bring us back to? They just told us that they seen crosses and crescents. Let's spin off real quick. Now, we haven't been back in this book in a minute. You know, we read this entire book top to bottom and we covered many of the most important chapters. And what we learned right from the lost continent of Mu is that even with the Mayas, a lot of their symbolism, right, has a root or origin that comes from the very first coming of man, the very first religion that man created, right? The belief in the one almighty God, right? No idols, right? Just sacred symbols of the great creator and creation. So what does this tell us? Some people may say, oh, well, there was trade between these people dwelling in Spiro and the Mayans. But from what we learned and what we gathered from history, a lot of these people were of the same race. Our copper-colored ancestors now, Ashe Ashe. And that symbol of the cross and the crescent has been a symbol that has been used in ancient Maya, ancient Lemuria for thousands of years. Check out some of the ancient symbols here. When we covered the book, we learned that we have crosses, crescent moons, sun symbols, stars of David, swastikas, and so much more. But the cross is one of the many ones, and the crescent some of the many ones that pop up frequently in a lot of these ancient Mayan hieroglyphs, and also here in America, in North America, the United States of America. Now, I add emphasis on that because this right here, this gives people something to connect to. There are a lot of people out here, not only like myself, who have ancestry that links us back to the ancient Americas. This gives us something to connect to. They just told us that in Spiro they found crosses and crescents, similar to what you find in ancient in the Mayan Yucatan. Right? And just to show you guys real quick, they make it very important, right, for folks to know that these figures are not idols. They are sacred symbols of the great creator and creation. Right? These are relics of Earth's first civilization. And they pass down because you find these same things in Cambodia with the Nagas, Hindustan, right, with the Hindus, here in America, in Africa, in Europe, and all over the globe, even in Hawaii. Hawaii, Honolulu. Honolulu is an ancient name. Yeah, I mean, we really get into this stuff. So going back to it, they're discovering stuff in Spiro inside the mounds that connect them back to the Mayans. Right? This is coming from and just to let people know, the Mississippian chiefdom. Right? The Mississippian mound builders, Cahokia, Etowah, Poverty Point, Serpent Mound, right? All of the peoples who dwelt in this amazing landscape that's filled with so many relics of an ancient past. Right? They saying that they had the conch shells came from the Gulf of Mexico, as they are not found nearer, and as pearls are not found in the Arkansas River, and as copper is not closer than the Lake Superior district. These articles in the mound indicate that the mound builders must have had carried on traffic with far distant points. Right? In this central room were several well-preserved skeletons. One lying on his back had across the breast 32 spare points of flint, measuring from 20 to 27 inches long, and of the finest workmanship. There were 9 bowls of baked clay besides this skeleton, 17 and 1.5 pounds of lead, 9 ore, and 15 long flint knives. And they go us to also tell us that they found many copper-covered wooden images. Right? Again, these images were not held and revered as gods themselves. They were symbols of the Great Spirit and many of the characteristics that come with. All this in Oklahoma, y'all. Right on our front door. Right in the backyard. Excuse me, in the backyard. Right? This is why a lot of people often say, like, yo, America is Egypt. I'm going to tell y'all exactly what they compared this mound site to. This specific passage from this article comes from the Kansas City Star, Kansas City publication, and they titled this bad boy, "A King Tut's Tomb Found in the Arkansas Valley on a Negro's farm in eastern Oklahoma." Mind you, this quote-unquote Negro was jacking. He was a Caddoan Indian. A Caddo Indian, or Washita, one of them. Shout out to Washita Moors, right? Them copper-colored folks, that tribe, right? This stuff is known, right? It's known throughout the community, right? These people, where this mound site is located, covered the Choctaw, the Washita, the Caddo, right? Mississippian chiefdom, going all throughout that. Right, which brings us back to them people, because Hernando de Soto encountered them when he came here, and he said himself, these people are black. Excuse me, my allergies kicking my ass. Right, on the Negro's farm in eastern Oklahoma. This is where that article comes from, you guys. I'm gonna drop all of this stuff in the description, so if you want to go and check it out and do your own research yourself, you feel free, man. It's gonna be there. So to move forward, let's do some, like, little research on some of the things that we found, or that archaeologists found inside these mounds, and better yet, who was responsible for blowing them up. Right? Niggas be hating. They just be hating all day. That's what a lot of people like to do, especially a lot of these archaeologists. Mind you, most of these relics that were dug up, they are in the Smithsonian now. So go figure, right? But yeah, let's check it out. So this article comes from the BBC. Pause. Right? Spiro Mounds, North America's Lost Civilization. North America's Lost Civilization, hence the title. Check that, man. They be right about some things, right?
Once you have changed your virtual Zoom name, go ahead and push your...
So yeah, published in 2021. Let's check it out. Larry Bilberg. So it says, by 1450, the mound city of Spiro was abandoned. Right? A treasure lost in time. Looters destroyed America's largest collection of Native American relics. Now, many have been reunited in a new museum exhibit. Right? In a new museum exhibit. Put on display. Right? Just so that they can lie and tell us whatever they want us to believe. Right? But yeah, so A lot of this also it happened in the 1930s, so it's pretty recent, and it was blown up by a group of people who just wanted to exploit it for its riches, right? Around this time, people got to understand we looking at like Great Depression. A lot of people are poor, so they're looking for the easiest way to make some type of bread. So it says, in 1933, on the eastern edge of the U.S. state of Oklahoma, a group of failed prospectors watched as their partner struck a pickaxe into clay. Witnesses say the air hissed as it escaped from a burial chamber that had been sealed for 500 years, right? They let out 500 years of souls once they cracked into this burial mound. 500 years of people, of ancestry, of history, right? I'm pretty sure they broke an omen once they did that, and that's why they got bad luck now, because you got people like me coming to snipe them down with the facts and the details, right? They said nothing like this had ever been discovered anywhere else in North America, with the exception of Cahokia, Etowah, Moundville, and Poverty Point, right? The compatriots pushed their way through the debris into a Native American mound, amazed by what they saw. Inside lay unimaginable treasure. Hundreds of engraved conch shells, thousands of pearl and shell beads, copper breastplates, large human effigy pipes, and piles of brightly colored blankets and robes. Newspaper would later call the find an American King Tut's tomb, right? This very neat newspaper right here, this is what they're referring to, right? Nothing like this had ever been discovered anywhere else in North America, said Eric Singleton, curator of ethnology at the National Cowboy and Western Heritage Museum in Oklahoma City. But the treasure soon disappeared. Where did the treasure go? It soon disappeared. Spiral mounds have been unearthed by a group of local men who called themselves the Pequot Mining Company, like these bastards, right? The Pequot Mining Company, responsible for stealing and thieving majority of the relics found inside these mounds. The artifacts they discovered were immediately sold around the globe, right? Separated, breaking more bad omens, right? Spiro's bounty is now spread among more than 65 museums across the US, Europe, and Asia. And researchers are still discovering additional galleries and people possessing its riches. Nearly a century later, the incident remains the worst looting of an archaeological site in US history. This is the worst looting of any archaeological site in US history, which means they went to town on these mounds. They went to town and they made history with what they stole. Right? It goes to show just how important these findings could have been, especially if you're tracing it back to the Yucatan. These people don't be stupid. They don't be dumb. They only tell us what we want to know, but they be knowing way more information than what truth they be spewing out. You know what I mean? So they be knowing what they be doing. And when they steal these things, they be having these plans already in the back of their head because they know exactly what type of history that they dealing with. Bring them things back home, man. We not playing with y'all. Bring them back home. Right? Spiro was home to a ceremonial center for a confederation of mound building nations called the Mississippian Culture. This year, 175 pieces were reunited in a traveling exhibition that set attendance records in Oklahoma City and has drawn new attention to spiral mounds, one of the most important and least understood sites in pre-contact North America, the most important out of the 5. I always heard a little bit about it, but we never really paid attention, said Wesley Cloud, a school track coach who grew up in the nearby town of Spiro. which gives the site its name. In June, he brought a dozen summer school students 30 miles from their home in Stigler, Oklahoma, to tour the archaeological site. The mounds barely rate a mention in textbooks. The mounds barely rate a mention in textbooks. Ain't that the truth, man? These niggas be lying. Right? He said, while noting that some years nearly half of his students have Native American heritage, this is something they can have pride in. This is something they can have pride in. Listen to that. Listen to that. That's amazing, dude. It's amazing. Because it's a fact. This is something they can have pride in. Not Native Americans, but people are taunting us to this land. Because the Native Americans don't even know about this stuff, bro. They didn't know this. If that's the case, it would have never been discovered in 1933. It would have been discovered. All right. The story of the long forgotten Spiro settlement seems particularly timely. It tells of a people desperately trying to adapt to a changing climate that would ultimately destroy their society. And at a moment when interest in indigenous communities is growing, it is a chance to marvel at the craftsmanship and sophistication of a forgotten nation whose trade routes snake thousands of miles across the continent. Spiro's treasures include engraved conch shells from the Florida Keys, copper breastplates from the Great Lakes, and beads from the Gulf of California. Huge, sophisticated trade routes. From the top to the bottom, that's what they're telling us, from the top to the bottom. And if you check out my older videos, we already made mention of how they found these serpent symbols all throughout the Americas. So you know that it was the same stuff going on amongst many peoples, right? Amongst many peoples, right? Many of the pieces are mind-blowing, said Singleton, the exhibit curator. You compare it to art from any culture at any time in the past, and you have to admit it is a masterwork, right? Because it is the first. It is of the first. It is of some of the first things that we have seen. These symbols, these relics are some of the first. They come from the advent of man. Some of the first. Some of the first. So let's really talk about it. Right, let's really talk about it, right? Where we at? The story behind the artifacts is just as compelling. Spiro was home to a ceremonial center for a loosely aligned confederation of mound-building nations called the Mississippian culture. Together it included about 3 million people from more than 60 tribes speaking 30 different languages. Very diverse. Very diverse. Yeah, it was black folks all up in there. So, the other principal cities were in Etowah, Georgia, Moundville, Alabama, and Cahokia, Illinois, near St. Louis, which was the biggest. These settlements rose to prominence beginning in the 800s during a period of favorable weather patterns that allowed them to create stable agricultural-based societies, said Dennis Peterson. An archaeologist and manager of the Spiro site, traditionally women tended crops like corn, beans, squash, and sunflowers while men hunted small game. Spiro, located on the Arkansas River, sat at a natural passage between the east and west and grew as a trade center. Right? And they go on to continue to tell us more. You know, check this, right? There would have been thousands of people here every day. Right? Every day. Right? Just wanted to show you that real quick, right? They continue to tell us that the Spiros were family with us, says Chase Earls, a cattle artist from Ada, Oklahoma, whose contemporary pottery and historical illustrations are included in the new exhibit. He said museum curators worked closely with native communities to ensure Spiro's story was properly interpreted. And while it's painful to see these artifacts outside of tombs where they belong, he pleased that non-natives are having a chance to learn about his culture, right? A bunch of non-natives, that's a fact. That's what they all are. Non-natives, right? They not from here. Right? That's who you teaching. You're not teaching the black people because that's the folks who really need to be learning. These pieces are sacred, he said. The burial items carry the spirits of our ancestors with them. The exhibit just finished its run at National Cowboy and Western Heritage Museum and moves to the Birmingham Museum of Art in Alabama in October 2021 before making its following stop the following March at the Dallas Museum of Art in Texas. One thing I want to say about this is that if it was as sacred as they say, then they wouldn't be on exhibition for display. If it's sacred, it's hidden, and this is the whole purpose of it being kept in a mound. That's the whole purpose of it being kept in a mound. Right? They check this. But visitors to Spiro Mounds can be forgiven if they don't immediately sense the importance of the site, located off a quiet farm road that zigzags by former cotton fields. Who was working these cotton fields? Right, them people been there for years, bruh. So they doing all this now. What happened to trying to help people stay on their lands during the Trail of Tears? You marching people off their land. You got people who don't live there coming invading on land that don't belong to them, and they buying it for $5, $5, whatever, and having their entire identity changed on paper. So-called Russians and Asians and whatnot. You know, the looting of Spiro, exhibit explains, was driven by the desperation of the Great Depression. A group of 6 local men hoped they could make money by selling Native American artifacts and formed a company named after the nearby settlement of Pequot. They paid the owner of Spiro's largest mound $300 for temporary rights to dig it up, although the men had no idea what lay inside. They soon unearthed bones along with arrowheads, pipes, and copper relics, as their finds began to interest collectors who reached the University of Oklahoma. Professor who asked the diggers to stop. Right, the professor asked them to stop. When the men refused, the scholar convinced the state legislature to pass one of the nation's first antiquities acts to protect archaeological sites in 1935. Right, he asked them to stop. They was like, nah, no call. No call. They calling this though, right, a cultural crime. Even so, the men kept digging illegally, and in August 1935, with 3 months left on their lease, they broke into the burial chamber. Right, that's when that bad luck hit them. Right, they got hit with that bad luck. I would love to know what that family is experiencing as of today. Right, greed should never feed the need. Always live by God, because he is the one true ruler, creator, and the one bestowed upon us to bless us. Right, and proceed to plunder it. They removed thousands of objects, making no attempt to document the site or its holdings. Skeletons were tossed carelessly to the side. Broken fragments of conch shells piled up like snow, and cedar poles used to build the chamber and carry the dead were burned as firewood. They destroyed this entire setup. The Pequot Mining Company. Shots at them. They did bad. Because what they did was they went in, put their hands on something that was anciently connected and rooted with the ground that it was built on. I would love to know what those families are experiencing as of today. Like, you know how they always say, like, don't mess with somebody's tombstone? This is the utmost example of that. Don't mess with a mother lover tombstone, especially if it's not a tombstone and they calling it a chamber. This was a chamber. So let's just take a look at what these things could have looked like, right? Real quick, just some more details, some more facts about this mound site. Archaeologists believe the Spiro Mound site was occupied from around 850 AD to around 1450 AD, right before the arrival of De Soto, Columbus, and them brothers. What led to his demise is unknown, although there is circumstantial evidence that the leaders may have lost their influence due to a severe drought, what is known for sure, however, is that for much of its existence, the site was a center for ceremony and trade with influences and contacts extending out for thousands of miles. So they tapped in with mad different people. They tapped in with mad different people, right? They got shells from as far as South Florida, flung as far as Illinois, Tennessee, and Texas. They also have sites across the southeast that have produced artifacts with designs extremely similar to those found at Spiro, which means these same designs are similar to what they find in Yucatan, which means it's similar to what you find in Egypt, Hawaii, Hindustan, the Nagas, Cambodia, right? Similarities all across the globe. All across the globe. What more information can we include? This is regarded by many archaeologists as one of the four most important prehistoric Indian sites east of the Rocky Mountains. Spiro was the center of culture during the Mississippian era. This era marked the spread of a common organized religion across much of the southeast and midwest. A common organized religion. Sun and serpent worship. The belief in the one great God. The one almighty. Right? The one great spirit. The one wonkin' tonkin'. This is why you still have relics of these things that existed amongst these people going into the 17s and 1800s, which is why you got folks like James Adair who constantly kept saying like, yo, these mother lovers is like the 12 tribes of Israel. These might be the Israelites. They got the belief in the one great spirit, right? They use words like Yahweh and Yahweh, hallelujah. They chant hallelujah during their ceremonial circle, preachers and dancing. Right, they have a medicine man. They rock with the staff, the serpent staff, similar to what Moses had in his hands. But there's a lot of similarities going across these peoples. Right, we got some more details. Right, just going into some of the things that they found. Right here we got the monetary chamber, giant freaking mound which had vegetation that grew over it. This mound was built, right? In the mound, you find a human mask in the basket, altars with blankets, beads, and 7 maces, big ass staves, alligator stone pipes, 30 copper axes, pearl beads, figgy pipes, 3 blankets, and 800 pounds of shell beads, 20 stone pints, projectile points being unearthed in this mound. Check out the structure of the mound, right? This is a drawing, but this is almost like how it looked, right? Built small mound, little small mound, bigger mound, and then super bigger mound, which is most likely the burial mound, right? The mortuary chamber, right? These are sketches built all together. Craig Mound, that's what that is, Craig Mound. Right, what else we got? They got more for us. Here we have an engraved shell cup fragment that is very similar to a specimen published by Brown. The design can be interpreted as a masked figure who carries a forked staff of the variety that Phillips and Brown identity as a serpent staff. A serpent staff. Hold on. Hold on real quick for them folks, man. Real quick for them folks, because we actually had a conversation with ChatGPT about this, and even they was able to say, let me just try to find a conversation for you guys. They be saving my conversations, I don't be knowing, but I don't be remembering, rather I should say, because I just be looking so much up. But this serpent staff, Right. Right. The serpent staff of Moses, what it really symbolized. In ancient Kemet, Egypt, the serpent staff represented divine authority, healing, wisdom, life force, energy. So when Moses had a serpent staff, the text is showing he carried divine rank, not just a weapon. Right? Come on, man. We tapping into real ancient thread. Moses' serpent staff, the feathered serpent, Quetzalcoatl, Kukulkan. The serpent represents divine knowledge in both traditions, right? Moses, the symbol of divine power. The feathered serpent, symbol of divine wisdom, advanced knowledge. Feathered serpent, serpent elevated, ascension, sky heavens, higher consciousness. Ancient world power symbol. It was known in Israel, in Egypt, Maya and Olmec, and the Mississippian cultures. It was the mark of rulers, priests, healers, those who carried the knowledge. And then they tying it now into my Spiro video. I had a conversation with them about making this video prior to that though, but they use it to tracked stars, used sacred geometry, and understood life force as a serpent energy. Moses and Quetzalcoatl share roles. They led people into a new age, battled corrupt rulers, carried healing powers, taught divine laws, and were linked with wisdom. Right, so this has an image of the serpent staff. We got more. This was found in the mound, at the mound site. Engraved shell cup design that is similar to a specimen published by Brown. The design motif is probably the head of a serpent. We got serpents all over this mother lover. Right? Check this one. Engraved conch shells gorget with a sun circle design decoration. This specimen was first published by Brown and Hamilton. This symbol is of a sun symbol, the sun circle with the cross in the middle with another circle, two circles in between. I'm just saying, y'all. I'm just saying, hold on. Right? Are we not seeing the same things? This is coming from the Lost Continent of the Mu book, like I said. Right? We got more. There's more. Hold on. Squares and circles. Right? Geometry. The Tau. A cross. Right? One of the most ancient symbols. It is found in the earliest writings of the motherland when they talking about Mu. They finding these things in Spiro. Right? Eye of Horus. An eye within the hand motif. The eye within the hand motif. Found in Spiro. Right? Engraved shell cup decorated with the design of a snake that wears the antlers of a deer. Right? Feathered serpent. Fragments of an engraved shell cup that Phillips and Brown identified as intertwined snakes, right? Serpents all over the place. All over the place. Right? Pearls and beads, all of this stuff found in Spiro. But wait, there's more. There's more. Right? A wheel or ear spool looks like a wheel. More copper, embossed copper fragments. Right? Copper fragment. There's more. These are some of my favorite ones when I read through this stuff. Right? We have the feathered serpent man dancing. Right? Dances with bows. We have an image of a wolf. Right? The publisher traced these things to recreate the images. Right? A shell engraved with more crosses, more tals. Right? This is in the Smithsonian. This also is in the Smithsonian, along with this one and this one. All of these can be found in the Smithsonian. They know the truth. Right? We have another one. right? Which looks like two men or two warriors probably dancing, right? Here we go. The feathered serpent. We got the feathered serpent. Right, we got more images of the feathered serpent. The blummed rattlesnake. No, the feathered serpent. The feathered serpent. The feathered serpent. Right, they make tribute to all of these things. Why is the serpent important, some may say? Let me give y'all some drop real quick. Again, coming from the Lost Continent of Mu book, it says, like I said, these figures are not idols. They are sacred symbols of the great creator and creation. They have a very intricate design and character, the sort that one meets with occasionally when studying the first writings of man. They symbolize the infinite, the creator as having seven. The creator as having seven great or principal forces, attributes, powers, desires, commands, or intellects. I have found each of these words used in various ancient writings, such as the serpent with 7 heads, which are intellects of powers, the serpent covered with feathers, whose 7 commands brought the world into existence and created man to govern it. The infinite creator, to symbolize the infinite creator. Feathered serpent, feathered serpent, feathered serpent, to symbolize the infinite creator, right? I just wanted people to understand, man. Like, I really had to bring this to the channel because when we talking about ancient America, we gotta understand exactly what it is that we are dealing with. Like, we dealing with some real historical stuff here, bruh. A lot that people don't know about, and like the brother said in the BBC Pause published article, it would give the people of America something to connect to. And this is the issue with being black today. What is black? What is black? We have nothing to connect to. Our culture is all we know after 1850 going into the 1900s. And truth is, that stuff is filled with a lot of negativity. It's filled with so much negativity. The destruction of our people. Mentally. And they play it at over and over and over and over again to us because it's a part of this mind control program that they impose on our people to keep us stuck in one period of time. And this is why we got to break free, man. Break free, break the chains, and become closer and connect with your roots. Because this is it right here. Followers of the feathered serpent, the almighty creator, the one holy God. It's not of man, and it's not of stone. It is not of image. It is not of iconography. It is not of physical body. It is of spirit. So I want people to connect back to your roots, man. And I thank those who tuned into this video today. Like I said, I was going to make it real informative for y'all. Some real big drop. And one of these days, maybe we might even go through the newspaper article. There's other portions of this newspaper that I actually want to read for people. Because it's like, oh, snap, I never knew that. Oh, wow, that's so interesting. And for the folks who really tapped in, truth unveiled. So again, I appreciate y'all. Thank you for tuning in. It's the Copper Color King, man. Much love. I love y'all. Make sure you check out the books on Amazon. Check out the canvases on Etsy. We're going to keep this show rolling. Keep the ball rolling. I love y'all. Subscribe. Notification bell. I know I said it twice. Tap in. Let's get it.